I'm George Curtis. Welcome to It's Your Environment. Each week, it's my privilege to bring guests that know a lot about the environment, have some concerns and interests about the environment, and are willing to share their ideas with us. They don't get paid. They often get criticized, but they're often appreciated. At least I appreciate them. Today's guest is Pat Durkin. You've probably seen him before. He's a well-known Wisconsin writer. As a matter of fact, I first met him probably more than 20 years ago when he was writing for the Oshkosh Northwestern and eventually all of the Gannett papers. And as you know, the newspaper business has gone south, way south, but he's been able to make a good living and attained a great deal of prestige writing for various independent groups. Pat, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, George. Very nice introduction.
Well, we probably should explain that we're so far apart, we're not going to shake hands. We each came in here with masks.
Right.
And we're socially distancing. And as far as we know, we're not sick.
As far as we know.
And we can be grateful about that.
Yeah.
Fresh air and distance seems to be one of the great attractions of the outdoors, always has been for you and me, and it should be getting more attractive to other people. I understand you just came back from Idaho. There's a lot of fresh air out there.
Yeah, I went out there with two of my high school buddies from the class of '74. So we're getting up there in age. I'll be 65 in January, but it was fun to go out with some guys that it was the first time in my life I've been at an elk camp and seen a guy doing yoga. One of my friend Duffy brought his yoga blocks along, but yeah, we did our traditional group shot at the end of the hunt too, and put on our COVID-19 masks so we could always remember what year it was that we did this, and it was a fun time.
And you weren't out there with cannons.
No,
it was arrows.
Yeah. I started bow hunting out there in 2006, and I wrote a column just recently, for the papers that still carry my column, about the fact that this is my 15th year out there, and I think I counted up 8 different pairings of people that have come along, and some of those things where you feel fortunate being in your mid-60s and still able to do this, because a number of my friends who have gone out there before, they never came back. They said, enough of that high altitude crap, we're not doing this anymore.
Well, I've heard cliches. If you really want to know somebody, marry them. More so, divorce them. Even more so, share an estate with them. But camping for 10 days probably trumps all of that.
Yeah. Well, in all seriousness, we took a lot of pride in the fact that we were out there in the same tent. It's a big tent, but still we're in the same tent for 16 days. And we are still talking to each other after that time, because I have been in that camp with other folks who I never invited back because, we just didn't get along. There's people who can pull their weight and people who go into a shell that they're fine when the day starts, but by the time you haul all your junk in and get it all set up, you're not talking to each other. So that happens in hunting camps, and you really do realize over the years that finding a good hunting partner is a hard thing to do.
And getting harder to do.
Yeah.
Getting much harder to do.
Yeah.
Well, besides the fresh air, what game did you see and what scenery?
Oh, I've been hunting southeastern Idaho in the same area now since, like I said, this is my 15th year. And I go out there and bow hunt elk. And my friends that came along this year, by the time I reached out to them, because one of my longtime buddies couldn't make it this year, and so I was down to just me. And then COVID knocked out another guy from Ohio who usually comes with me. So I was down to just me, and I respect the mountains too much to think that you should be out there by yourself in the Rocky Mountains, hunting elk, no matter how experienced you are, because you can get into trouble. And so I reached out to a couple of my friends from high school in that age who I knew were good guys, who I knew I could get along with for 14 days. And by the time, though, I got a hold of them, the elk licenses were already sold out for non-residents. So they bought small game licenses and fishing licenses and went trout fishing and grouse hunting. And they ended up with 2 grouse and about a handful of trout. But the thing that was kind of fun about it was that they both like cooking. So they made some meals that typically I don't get when I'm out there because I usually just live off of the dehydrated meals. So it was kind of fun having a different fresh meals at night.
The outdoors isn't just about shooting something.
Right.
And I think we're beginning to appreciate that the out of doors is self-sustaining. All it has to be is out of doors for it to be valuable to us.
Yeah.
And it's attractive because of what it provides in terms of scenery and natural resources and beauty and cleaning the air and the water and people who hike, bicycle, sketch, photograph. It belongs to everyone, not just the crazy people wearing orange for 9 days in Wisconsin.
Right.
And we shouldn't really forget that.
Yeah. You know, that's one of the fun things about as we move along here in society is that I know myself, I took up running about 13 years ago. And you see these people now doing trail running and some of these trails that I think are a struggle to walk up and hike up. I mean, some of these young folks and older folks are, you know, they're not moving at a walking, hiking pace. They're moving at a running pace. And you got to respect that. You think, God, it's hard enough to do it, like I say, with a backpack on you, but now you're putting on running shoes. And I'm paranoid about falling, though, because I think I've fallen enough now where, like, on this last trip, I took some chances I normally don't take because I always... if I have a race coming up this fall, like a marathon or something, I won't take chances hunting because I'll think, if you fall now and hurt yourself, you won't be able to run in November. But this year, I took some chances and I took a fall a week ago. I'm packing up I got an elk, and I was packing up the final load of meat. That's coming down this hill, and I was thinking, I have more meat than I should be carrying. I know kind of what I should be carrying, but I wanted to get it all out. I was done. I thought I want to get it all off the mountain tonight. Well, then I took too much weight, and I decided to keep going even though it was dark out. And packing up meat in the dark is never a good idea. Well, before long, I took one little fall. Thought, well, I still didn't take the hint. Well, the next fall I started off by losing my balance on the right side, and when I overcorrected to the left side, I rolled my left ankle so bad that now I'm walking around with one of those little air casts on, but luckily I didn't break anything. But when I first went down, I thought I broke my ankle because there was so much popping and snapping that I thought, man, I just broke my ankle, and my foot laid there flopping when I tried to pick my leg up. And I finally realized, now I realized what I'd done was stretched everything else so bad that the ankle had gotten loose.
Well, Patrick, age and experience are supposed to bring wisdom. In your case and mine, it just hasn't worked.
No, we're slow learners.
We're going to have to take our first break.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back. Welcome back to It's Your Environment. I'm George Curtis. Pat Durkin is my guest, and we're at a time where we can't pick up a newspaper, what newspapers are left and what's left of newspapers, or listen to the radio or talk to anybody without bumping into politics. I have never seen this country so intensely involved with in-your-face politics. Well, it would be refreshing in an outdoor show to avoid politics. I don't see how we can. To be politicians, the office holders and those who seek to be office holders are making all kinds of promises to us about how they're going to protect our environment. And I'll be frank, I was angry at Governor Walker for his entire 10 years because I thought what he did was largely ignoring the science, ignoring protection of our natural resources, allowing promotion and sale of public land, weakening the stewardship fund. And the biggest thing that troubled me at that time might have been clean water. But the second biggest thing was the deer herd and CWD. And correct me, I'm sure you will, if I'm wrong, it seems to me at the beginning of the Walker years, we had CWD in one county, and now we've got it in about 55 counties, and I've seen absolutely nothing done during the Walker time, and for that matter, since we've got a new regime in. Now, shoot me down. Go ahead, Pat.
Well, I'll just correct you on one thing. It's kind of complicated, but we have now documented CWD, chronic wasting disease, in 29 counties. But then they also have, if it's within 10 miles of a border of another county, then they say that county is affected by it. So you have about 55 counties affected by it, but it's actually only documented in 29. Now, chances are it's in more than 29 counties, very good chances are, but we have not had real standardized, scientifically driven models for sampling those areas. And that was, mentioning politics in the outdoors, I have to say that I'm always disappointed when I get emails these days from readers who tell me they don't want to read about politics in the outdoors, and my response to them is always, well, you're in the wrong country then. In our country, we're a country of politics. We get together in rooms, at least before COVID-19, and we argue about politics, and that's just the way the outdoors isn't immune to that, and I don't think it should be immune to that. I just think it's a part and parcel of being American that we have disagreements and we talk about stuff openly, and if we don't like someone else's opinion, we still talk about it, but that should be done respectfully. And I have to say too, I agree with you. I think Governor Walker not only ignored a lot of the environmental issues, he defied the science on a lot of environmental issues. And we had really good science in a lot of these laws we had that were struck down and done away with and basically filed away during those 8 years of the Walker administration. And I was hoping that when Governor Evers came in after campaigning on the fact that we need better chronic wasting disease policies, that we'd actually see some improvement there. But it's been almost 2 years, and we still don't see anything really different going on in the Department of Natural Resources about chronic wasting disease. So that's been disappointing. We're just kind of on autopilot. We're still looking for other states to provide some science on it. We aren't putting a whole lot of real deep effort into our scientific understanding of CWD. So yeah, I'd say I share your disappointment on where we've gone so far with in the new regime.
Well, I read something just last week that the water in our streams is getting warmer, and somebody might say, well, who cares? I swim. Well, we care. It's already affecting the ability of walleyes to reproduce,
right?
Trout to reproduce,
yep.
Other cold water species. It means that what we think are lesser species, warmer water species, like bass and panfish, may move in and take up the space. But it makes a difference. Global warming, climate change, warming of the water, reduction of the quality of the water itself, all of that makes a difference, and the politicians really have more control over it than you and I do.
Yeah. And on that whole front of global warming, I guess the argument I always tell people, the discussion I always try to bring up is that this isn't a liberal versus conservative. It shouldn't be a liberal versus conservative discussion, because you think some of the best minds we have in this country working on this or looking at this are in the military. Whether it's the Army, the Navy, the National Oceanographic Administration. These are people who are pretty serious scientists. That, they aren't liberal weenies. They're pretty serious people. And when you see the Army plotting and planning how things are changing on, like in the surface of Greenland, and the way the ice movements are up there, the glaciers, how they're moving and being affected by the climate change, I think that's worth paying attention to. It's not, like I say, it's not a bunch of long-haired hippies or liberal geeks out there. These are generals and admirals and people who we tend to consider are among our more conservative people. So I listen to them and think I think they're probably onto something there.
Well, you brought up the word science, and that's significant right now. It's in the public discourse. about COVID. Now, this isn't a COVID program,
Right.
But it's in everything. And one of the things that troubled me is that we had an excellent branch of the Wisconsin DNR of scientists, and they made a fantastic study of the impact of mining up in the north when there was consideration of opening up this area for mining. And they concluded substantially that it was dangerous to the environment. And that particular administration didn't fire them, just eliminated their job description, so they were gone.
Right.
And of course, think on the federal level of the power of the government to just reclassify all the scientists. And I fear that's going on today in the environment as well as in the health area.
Yeah, I've often thought the last couple of years that what we saw in Wisconsin from 2010 to 2018 was almost like a warm-up act for what we're seeing, at the federal level recently with COVID, where you see the CDC having its policies rewritten by Washington administrators, not by scientists. And science isn't perfect, but the thing about science that you always know is that it's always growing, it's always building, it's always doubting itself and testing itself. And if you have one study, someone else is going to come back with another study to challenge it. And so to me, it's a real cool, almost democratic interaction where you have everyone having at it and testing each other's knowledge.
Well, you and I aren't scientists, at least I'm not, but we're going to take our second break. And when we come back, I'm going to ask you for a report card in your honest opinion as to how we're doing in the state of Wisconsin right now.
Okay.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to It's Your Environment. I'm George Curtis. Pat Durkin, a longtime friend, is my guest, and he's an encyclopedia about what happens in the environment throughout the country. But he just brought me back to reality off camera and reminded me of the time that he and I were driving through the mud in Rush Lake, and my Suburban quit, and we walked lots of miles, and we couldn't hitch a ride with the county employees. And then we got stopped by a game warden who thought that we looked suspicious. And of course, we still look suspicious. But it turned out to be Wayne Yeide, a well-known game warden of this area. He took us for a ride to my home, and we had some coffee, and we had a good time. But I want to use as much of this last segment as I can, Pat, to get your view as to how we're doing in the state of Wisconsin with our environment, with our deer, our grouse, our water, our public lands, the hiking trails, all of those things. What's your take on it?
I guess right now, my overall grade would be a C, D plus region area. And I think a lot of it's because I don't know where to draw the line as far as should Governor Evers be pushing harder, or is it futile because of the setup right now with all our gerrymandering that's gone on in Wisconsin, where we have a Republican legislature that isn't in danger of being evened out. We have a more democratic debate. I guess I like the idea of making sure we keep our different branches of government in a little bit of conflict and not in constant lockstep. I think it's good to have a little conflict, and friction built into these things. And I remember during the Walker years writing a column about that if you have people like over in Kewaunee County having to go into town to go to a common water tap to get the only pure water so they can go back home and drink clean water. If that's your situation anywhere in the state, politicians should be the ones manning that water spigot and bringing it out to people. And that's, I think, disgraceful that we have in this modern era, forcing people to drive into town to get clean water. It's just, to me, it boggles my mind, and that should be a deep humiliation in our state. Because, Wisconsin's such a wonderful, rich state in natural resources, and here we have areas that are just so polluted with animal waste and even human waste that people can't drink out of their own wells. What is that? And I know Governor Evers wants to make that his number one priority, and still, but it still seems like it's just kind of limping along and not really getting as much done as we thought we could. So I hope that improves.
How about the wildlife itself? Some people are interested in the sandhill cranes and the doves. I hear shooting in my neighborhood, so it must be dove season.
Yeah.
And we're seeing geese, and a lot of smaller birds are kind of accumulating for the flight south. That's always a fun time of the year.
Yeah.
I see more eagles and hawks than I've seen for a long time.
Right.
But really, I'm just pretending that's my prime interest. My prime interest is grouse. How are the grouse doing?
Well, that brings up a fun topic, really, because we love seeing all the sandhill cranes. They've really bounced back dramatically in Wisconsin, and same with the bald eagles and a lot of the raptors now. And it's, to me, I have Cooper's hawks and these sharp shins. I can't tell. Personally, I can't tell one from the other unless I get a picture and send to a person who knows and say, could you identify this between a Cooper's and is this a sharpshin or a Cooper's? But I think, well, at least I know to ask, so, but I'm not perfect. But from what I understand, the people, to get back to your question, from what I understand, the people I talk to who are really big grouse hunters are thinking we have a pretty good year coming up. I mean, they in the early days of the season that we're in right now. This is September 23rd, I think. What I'm hearing is they're getting good flushes, but it's still too much foliage to get good shooting. So we'll see if that holds up during throughout the fall. But so far, so good.
As far as pheasants are concerned, that's become a kind of a put and take thing from the DNR, and the DNR has a limited budget, so there's less put and less take. Am I correct?
Yeah, I'm not, because we live up in this part of the state, I'm not as tuned into pheasants as it might be if I was down in the southern part of the state, but it still seems like we've kind of actually lost ground in many ways on pheasants. We're for a while there, I think as a state, we were doing pretty good of encouraging people to keep the windrows intact in these fields, so you have a little more habitat on the fringes of the farm fields. Then as we got into the mass production of corn, a lot of those windrows came out, plowed them right under, and bulldozed them out, and we can now farm corn more efficiently. So the pheasants kind of took a hit there. But it seems like we really don't have the habitat in Wisconsin the way they do in states just west of us, whether it's western Minnesota, most of Iowa, the Dakotas, where you have the real famous pheasant grounds now. We'll probably never get back to that, at least not in our lifetime.
Well, the key is people who care. And unfortunately, people who were raised in the out of doors, typical farm people, are people like you and me who's got gray hair or no hair or borrowed hair. And I worry about, does this new generation care? I've got 16 grandchildren, and I've never seen any of them without a gadget in their ear or playing with a phone, and don't have any interest among them to go out and hunt and fish and canoe and observe the plants that are underwater and on top of the water. If we don't get that generation to care, this is all done, isn't it?
Well, that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges we're facing, and what I haven't figured out yet. I don't think we'll ever see the hunter numbers that you and I grew up with. And I'm a baby boomer, and the biggest boom in hunting ever in our country happened for my generation, where just the perfect storm, where the wildlife was coming back, was actually starting to boom. We had a whole big generation of people coming up without a whole lot of alternative recreation out there. So a lot of us did grow up hunting and fishing. Whereas I look at my kids and their generation, they have a number of things to keep themselves occupied. But what's encouraging, one of the groups I've been working with now a lot in the last couple of years is this meat eater group out in Montana. they're a big media group that's on Netflix and podcasts and have their own podcast network. They're all people. The oldest guy, Steve Ranella, the guy who's the president of the overall group, he's 46 and he's the old guy. And so when they have me around, I'm really the old guy because I'm almost 18, 20 years older than Steve. But what's encouraging, when you read the people who are following me on Instagram, which is to me kind of funny at times, they're like, they could be young. They're younger than my daughters. A lot of these folks I'm working with now, and having reading me, and so it's encouraging that they might not be there in the numbers that I grew up around, but at least they're there, and as they're getting into their young adulthood, they're picking up the interest. I'm hoping that will continue.
Well, Pat, it's a delight to have you.
Thank you.
You add so much. We've run out of time. I'm getting a signal from Ron that we've really run out of time.
Okay.
But I have a message for everyone in the state of Wisconsin. All of these resources are important. They're critical. And in Wisconsin, the most important and critical is your water. If you can't drink your water, don't expect the fish to drink your water. If you can't drink your water and the fish can't drink your water, it's poison. Stop the poisoning. I'm George Curtis. Thank you.